If you're investing in real estate right now during this COVID pandemic quarantine period, or you've been considering getting invested in real estate, and now that you've had some time due to the pandemic to really get your game up and your knowledge and your motivation level up, but you're still staying on the sidelines because, well, there's a lot of uncertainty as to where the market and the world at large is going to be headed, then there are some considerations that maybe you're not thinking about that could really influence your decision, especially when it comes to house flipping. Because traditionally, you want to get in, get out, finish your flip, and move on to the next project. But with all the uncertainty, house flipping and possible restrictions on having contractors come to your house and how many people can come to an open house and a lot of other factors during this crazy time in history, those are things that may detract you from doing so. But it turns out there could be a possibility for you to do a house flip nice and slow at your own pace and actually make more money than you normally would house flipping. So in this video, we're going to take a look at those considerations and the pros and cons of the things that, again, you may not have thought of at all. And I really would urge you to watch this video all the way to the end because the results may surprise you. For some of you, this is really going to open your eyes. For some of you, this isn't going to change your situation, but you won't know unless you watch it all the way to the end. It's not a long video, so stay with us. Once again, welcome back to Confident Real Estate. I'm your host, JC. Now, let's say you found the perfect ideal house to flip. Spectacular location, no real structural issues. You know you can make this a success. In a perfect market, perfect world, it is a home run. But perhaps the reason you found it is because a lot of investors are on the sidelines a little bit reluctant to pull the trigger right now. With all the coronavirus restrictions and constant threat of lockdown and the inability to potentially get contractors in on time or get the inspections you need from different city agencies on time, being stuck in a tight flip time schedule in and out 90 days or so doesn't seem like a great idea. But at the same time, if you're going to be locked down, why not be locked down in your flip? It also doesn't make sense to be paying rent and a mortgage somewhere else if you're going to spend the vast majority of your time at your flip doing renovations. And again, if this is maybe your first attempt at a house flip, maybe you don't want the added pressure of a tight time schedule. Maybe you want to take your time and really get some experience and some knowledge and learn things by doing them. That is how you grow your knowledge base and succeed at the projects you take on in the future. This is the perfect time to do that. So can you, or should you, live in your flip while you're flipping your project, your house project? There's a lot of benefits to that again, like I said, you may not be considering or thinking about. So we're going to cover those right now. And again, this is talking about a timeline where you're going, instead of 90 days in and out on a house flip, to maybe 6 to 12 months or longer. It may all sound manageable and pretty straightforward to live in your flip house project while you're actually doing the renovations. But again, it is not that straightforward. The fact that you may live in the project as your primary residence will have a deeply significant impact on factors such as how much you end up getting taxed at the end of the project when you finally sell your finished house. It is also going to impact how you finance this flip project. And obviously, your timeline to complete the flip is going to be deeply impacted by the fact that you're living in the flip. Plus, there's the general factors of your stress and health because, let's face it, you're living in a construction zone. Your budget for the project is going to be significantly different than if you were doing the flip the traditional way, and your progress towards financial freedom may be delayed, but it also may be with huge returns compared to what you would normally get if you were doing multiple flip projects in the same amount of time it's now going to take you to do this one flip. The other thing that may be impacted is how quickly you hit that like button. No, I'm just kidding. But obviously, that does have an impact on our channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider hitting like on this video, and not only that, but hitting subscribe. We are trying to grow the channel, and it helps us so we can continue to help you. All right, that's the end of my PSA. Thanks. Let's start with the reason that you're even investing in real estate and considering doing a house flip project: to make money. But at the end of the day, how much of that hard earned money is Uncle Sam going to dip into your pocket and take as his cut? Well, if you plan to live in this house that you're flipping for at least 2 years until hopefully the world stabilizes again, then you could end up walking away without paying a penny in capital gains taxes. And based on what your profit margin might be, that could be a lot more money that you get to keep when you sell. A lot more money. It is extremely important that before we get into this, you fully understand how the IRS classifies people who are in the business of house flipping. If you are somebody who typically buys, renovates, and remodels homes and then sells them and then moves on to the next project on a continuing basis, then you will be classified by the IRS as a real estate dealer and not a real estate investor. If you just buy a flip project, you do it, you sell it, and then a year or two from now, you might buy another one, that's different. But if you are in the business of flipping houses on a continuing basis, the IRS is automatically going to classify you as a real estate dealer. And therefore, they don't look at what you're selling as a house. They look at what you're selling as a piece of your inventory that you have now sold. And that classification means you're no longer subject to capital gains taxes. You're subject to ordinary income tax, which is subject to the self-employment tax. So what does that all mean? That means a typical person in the business of house flipping can be hit with a 25 to over 52% tax bill on their profits for every flip they do, depending on where that property is located. Again, 25% to 52% plus of your profits are going to have to be handed over to Uncle Sam if you're classified as a continuing house flipper and a real estate dealer rather than investor. Now, compare what we just said against what we said a little bit before that. If you live in the house at least 2 years, you don't even have to pay capital gains taxes, let alone ordinary income taxes at that significantly higher tax bracket. If you don't live in the house for at least 2 years, but let's say you live there a year, you're going to be subjected to capital gains taxes, still far lower than ordinary income taxes. But if you take those profits and invest them in a rental property, not another flip, that doesn't qualify, but a rental property, you may be able to do a 1031 capital gains deferred exchange and still sell the house in less than 2 years and not pay capital gains taxes because you've deferred those taxes into another project. Again, speak with your accountants, speak with your financial advisors, and speak with a qualified intermediary 1031 exchange agent to really understand the full scope of the project, the process, and how it can affect your personal situation. Everybody's financial situation is different. So make sure you understand what the tax implications are for you specifically before you pull the trigger. But be aware that these are some major options that will allow you to potentially keep a ridiculously larger amount of your earnings than if you were typically doing a in and out house flip. There's a lot of benefits to staying there long term. And when it comes to the 1031 exchanges, you should also click that video link I'm going to leave down below in the description of this video for the entire video that we did in full detail on every aspect of how a 1031 exchange works. You should check that out. Before you sell the property and worry about the tax implications and how much your hard-earned money is going to be handed over to Uncle Sam, you actually have to buy the property and also pay for the renovations. So how are you financing this project? That could be a con to living in the property while you flip it, but it may be an enormous pro to why you should live in the property while you're doing the renovations and flipping it. Not all mortgages and financing options work for fix and flip projects, but if you do plan to live there for at least a couple of years, you might be able to qualify for, let's say, an FHA loan, which means very little money down. A lot more of your savings can go into the renovations, and you're going to get a great interest rate. The caveat to that is that the FHA loan program does have strict habitability requirements. So if you're buying a property that, say, doesn't have running water, or it's got electrical issues, heating issues, you got a problem. It's not reasonable to think that that is a livable property at the time you're buying it. It has to be habitable. If it's just completely outdated and looks like you're stepping into the 1970s and it's all cosmetic renovations, then you may very well be able to get a great FHA loan at a great rate with very little money down, and you can renovate it over the next couple of years while you live there. That's phenomenal. Typically, flippers who are in the business of flipping house after house after house get hard money loans, fix and flip loans. They come at higher interest rates. They also require that they be repaid back in full within 12 months or less. Typically, less. That means you are going to be under a little bit of a time constraint. You're also going to be paying a significantly higher interest rate than if you went with the traditional financing of like an FHA loan. That also means that you're not going to own the property long enough to qualify for the capital gains exemption. If you can't quit your day job and work full-time solely focused on this house flip project, then living in the house flip while you're doing the renovation is a tremendous pro, because it gives you the time to greatly increase your knowledge and experience that will deeply impact in a positive way all of your future investment deals. You will learn so much. Plus, you'll be able to avoid, or at least fix, any mistakes you make along the way that typically happen as a result of being rushed by a tight timeline of a normal house flip. The con is that if you're spending months after work, on the weekends, during holidays, or whenever, doing the actual renovations, you may start to get complacent and lose motivation, which means your timeline can stretch much longer than you anticipated, which may impact how much you get back in overall returns when you sell. The other side of it is, if you're living in essentially a disaster zone for months and months on end, it will take an impact on your mental fatigue and general well-being and health. Now, if you add children and pets into the equation in a house that's got tools, paint, supplies, tarps all over the place, it's not a recipe for an ideal situation. You certainly don't want to prolong that living situation longer than you have to. So it is critical to stay on some sort of timeline, if not the typical in and out timeline of a house flip. Obviously, another critical component in this whole equation is your budget. If you're living in the project, it becomes more manageable because you can spread the costs out over time. It allows you to take on projects as you save up the money for them without feeling rushed. That said, it is going to be a prolonged period of time that you mentally need to prepare for, that you're going to watch money going out the door for those renovation costs and your mortgage financing costs before you ever see any money coming back in from your eventual profits when you sell the project. But if you're living in the house while you're doing the flip, then you're not paying for a mortgage or rental payments at another residence that you're really not going to see, because if you're not at your day job, you're probably at that project putting in the work to complete the flip. So that is a huge expense off your plate that also adds to your budget for the renovations. The bottom line is, you absolutely can take on a house flip and live in it while you slowly get it ready for market, and hopefully tremendous returns when you sell it. There are obviously wonderful financial advantages to doing so, as we've covered in this video. But you do need to make a plan and a strategy, specifically when it comes to your budget, your tax strategy upon sale, and how you're going to finance or mortgage the property to buy it, and then also pay for the renovations that you need to do in order to get it ready for market. Stick to a timeline, even an approximate one. If you have some basis of a timeline, it will help you in the process. And planning all of this before you jump into, or rather move into, the project will tremendously increase your chances of success. As you've probably heard me say, if you've watched even a few videos on this channel, discipline will never lead you to failure. Once again, I really appreciate that you watched this video all the way to the end. Clearly, there are tremendous advantages to doing a slow house flip, especially during this quarantined COVID period in our lives. If you haven't already, please hit like on the video and really do consider hitting subscribe because we are trying to put out a lot of great content multiple times every single week for your benefit. And if you haven't already, check us out on Instagram. I'll leave the link down below because we do post articles that are relevant to some of the things we discuss on this channel, as well as updates about future videos that are going to launch. Once again, I appreciate it. Thank you for watching Confident Real Estate.